Vilcraft raised his hand and called forth the golden hand, channeling its power into the divine hammer, MJ Fainir. Sparks of light gathered around the anvil as he began forging a sacred relic, his focus unshaken despite the storm of energy surrounding him. The hammer struck true, a blinding technique. Ame, no Mahitatsu, tore through the air as holy light split the darkness, sealing the relic's power within the blade. Later, Vil stood in the living room of his new home, a space meant to serve as both his workshop and the beginning of his life with his fiancée. That peace shattered when shocking news arrived from Sirikul Hassan, the woman he was set to marry. She removed her glasses and spoke plainly. She wanted to call off their engagement. Vil reminded her of their family's arrangement, that he was meant to inherit the smithy and she the Hassan trading company. She cut him off. She had already found true love. A man embraced her from behind, greeting Vil with a cold smile. It was Sechin. Vil stared, disbelief written across his face, struggling to understand how long the two had been together. Sirikul accused Vil of choosing work over her, of leaving her to grieve alone after her father's death, while Sechin had comforted and supported her instead. Vil argued that a client's sudden arrival had saved the company by chance. Not through Sechin's efforts. Sirikul insisted she'd fought to rebuild Hassan trading. With no other choice, Sechin praised her determination, dismissing Vil's version as mere coincidence. He added that her refusal to give up after her father's death was what people truly recognized in her. Sechin then delivered the real blow. Vil needed to move out, since the new home and store had just been finished for someone else's future. Vil snapped, asking why they couldn't simply live at Sirikul's house instead. Sechin replied coldly that the house was theirs now, and he refused to live under the same roof as her ex. Sechin revealed Sirikul was carrying his child and declared himself the new head of the household, his pride refusing anything less. Vil could only stare, stunned by the words. Fury broke through Vil's composure as he lunged forward, shouting that this couldn't be real. Sirikul urged him not to yell, insisting he was scaring her, while Sechin taunted him to take the house, the store, anything he wanted. Sirikul hesitated, saying she'd manage the smithing herself, but Sechin cut in, reminding her the company still needed Vil's weapons and asking him not to quit the store. Vil turned away, declaring that none of it concerned him anymore, and walked out the door without looking back. Sechin sneered, calling Vil a once in a millennium genius blessed with the golden hand, while boasting he could take over the store too, resentful that their father had always favored Vil. Sechin's rage spilled out, accusing Vil of looking down on him, listing everything Vil had that he never did their father's trust. The god's blessing, a beautiful fiancée. A woman arrived at the smithy carrying a bouquet, asking politely where she could find Master Hapusai. Onlookers gasped, realizing the visitor was none other than Princess Anaros. Sirikul, puzzled, asked why a princess would visit a random smithy and why she'd mentioned Vil's name. Anaros apologized, explaining Hapusai was simply the shop's name, and that she'd come to congratulate Vilcraft on opening it. Anaros praised Sirikul for being lucky enough to marry such an amazing man, mistaking her for Vil's fiancée and the daughter of the Hassan Trading Company presidents. Sirikul corrected her. Vil had already left the shop, and Sechin was the new owner, with the engagement to Vil already called off. Anaros's expression darkened as she confirmed with Sechin that he was the one taking over Hapusai. Sechin boasted that he would take over Hapusai and everything that came with it, assuring her he'd handle it all with full responsibility. Anaros mocked his confidence, unimpressed by his boasting, before turning to leave without another word. She ordered her knights to immediately cancel all dealings with Hassan Trading Company. Smiling coldly, she issued an emergency order to track down Vil with everything they had, certain he couldn't have gotten far. A knight asked what was truly at stake if Vil's brother had taken over Hapusai's work instead. Meanwhile, far from the capital, Vil sat calmly by a riverside, cracking his knuckles after a swim. At peace despite everything, he activated the golden hand, vowing never to return to the capital, even if they came crawling back to apologize. He wondered aloud what a Hapusai even meant to him now, his thoughts drifting to memories of his grandfather. His grandfather's voice echoed in memory, explaining that a blacksmith blessed with the golden hand was someone like him, someone who carried a unique crafting skill passed through every generation of Hapusai. Vil activated skill, Ultra Alchemy, channeling his power into a burst of golden light that surged from his hammer. He mused that flooding the market with his creations could trigger a financial collapse, so he decided to hold back, selling just enough to fund his travels. His grandfather once told him that most who bore the golden hand received only one skill, but Vil was the sole exception in the entire history of Hapusai. Before passing everything on, his grandfather named him the new Hapusai, entrusting him with the divine hammer MJ Fainir, the sacred relic representing generations of the family's devotion to forging divine artifacts. Vil reflected on all he had inherited from his grandfather Genkoji craft, the shop's name, the divine artifact, and the duty of maintaining the city's barrier, the hero's holy swords. Anaros explained that the kingdom had remained at peace only because Hapusai had always been there, quietly holding everything together. A knight asked whether they should inform the heroine Caroline. Anaros confirmed the barrier had just been maintained, so it would hold for a year. But if Master Hapusai stayed missing, that barrier would soon fall into real danger. She reminded them that Vil had only just finished maintenance on the Holy Sword. Unless a horde of ancient dragons attacked, they'd be fine for a while, though she remained tense. She ordered her knights to move out at once to find Vil, protect the barrier, and secure the capital's safety. Watching Caroline soar through the sky, Anaros muttered that they needed to lock him down fast before some other woman got to him first. She noted that Caroline trusted Vil not only as a craftsman but as a man, and now that he was single again, competition would only grow fiercer. Far away, Vil opened a hidden box, retrieving supplies for his journey. He reasoned that Sechin could handle the shop now, since the maintenance work had only started after their father died to keep food on the table. Never Hapusai's true calling. He recalled his grandfather's words. Hapusai's true mission was never maintenance work. His grandfather had told him to fulfill Hapusai's true mission, gesturing to the model of the divine hammer MJ Fainir as his guide. As a child, Vil had cried at his grandfather's bedside, hearing the words that he must forge original sacred relics and offer them to the heavens. Now grown, Vil raised his hammer toward the sky, realizing his grandfather had been pointing the way for him all along. He forged a drifting teleportation crystal, ranked SSS, its power crackling with raw energy. He activated it, and the crystal's light surged, ready to teleport him somewhere he'd never been. Vil vowed to become a legendary craftsman like his grandfather Gankoji, to travel the world, hone his skills, and sharpen his inspiration. He swore that one day he'd forge a sacred relic even more incredible than MJ Fainir itself. The crystal's light consumed him, and in the next instant, he found himself standing in an unfamiliar forest beneath a crescent moon, wondering where he had drifted to. A scream cut through the trees, turning. Vil spotted a beast folk girl, terrified and cornered, crying out for someone to help her. Vilcraft, a wandering blacksmith, comes across a wolf. Eared girl collapsed in the woods under a crescent moon. He calls out to check if she is all right. She wears a slave collar, marking her as trafficking merchandise. Vil notices blood and torn ground nearby. Her former owner appears to have been killed and eaten by something in the forest. The girl whimpers that she is in pain. Her leg is horribly mangled, chewed through. She screams in agony. Vil pulls out his hammer and activates a skill, telling her not to move. He raises the hammer toward her, and the girl flinches back in fear. Unsure what he is about to do, seeing her tears and confusion, Vil reassures her gently that he has no intention of hurting her. He channels power into the hammer, activating a skill, and swinging it down with precision. Light bursts from the hammer as the skillful restoration triggers. Her destroyed leg knits back together, instantly flesh and bone reforming in seconds. The girl stares at her fully healed leg in disbelief, unable to process what just happened. Vil explains simply that he used his hammer to activate a restoration skill. Curious about the extent of his abilities, Vil decides to test another skill, aiming the hammer at the collar around her neck. The collar shatters apart under the skill's effect. Confused, the girl asks what happened. Vil tells her she is now truly free, and reveals that if she'd tried removing it herself, it would have detonated. As night falls, Vil introduces himself and suggests they make camp. The girl, delighted, introduces herself as Poro and thanks her rescuer, calling him Big Brother. The next task is shelter. Vil swings his hammer at a massive tree, activating a transmutation skill to convert wood directly into a structure. The tree trembles, cracks, and reshapes itself under the force of his ability. Poro watches in astonishment as the tree fully transforms into a house. Vil presents it to her as their lodging for the night, addressing her fondly. The scene shifts to a ravaged frontier region of the Geta, Nurga Kingdom, devastated by what looks like an ancient dragon horde. Knights survey the destruction, wondering who could be responsible. Amid the wreckage stands Lady Caroline Iceberg, renowned as the heroine of the Holy Ice Sword, having apparently dealt with the threat herself. Knights arrive to summon her back to the royal palace, insisting her presence is essential for the kingdom's stability, since the town's barrier alone isn't enough protection. They're stunned that she handled the crisis single-handedly. Caroline inspects her weapon and notices a problem. The blade of her sacred sword has chipped. The knights, used to her calm and controlled demeanor, are shocked to see her smile at the sight of the damage. Even a holy sword isn't immune to wear. As the knights react in surprise, Caroline suddenly vanishes from where she stood, leaving them stunned by her disappearance and cryptic parting words. Caroline arrives at the royal capital of Gaeta, Nerga, her mood noticeably lighter than usual. Her cat companion teases her about it as she walks through the crowded streets. The cat needles her further, asking if she is excited to see her beloved smithing prince. Caroline admits she is looking forward to seeing Vil again. The cat agrees, praising how carefully Vil maintains it compared to anyone else. The cat calls her hopeless, and Caroline pushes back, insisting she is only there because of Vil. The cat recalls how she once wiped out an entire dragon horde just to test whether the sword would chip, all as an excuse to visit him. They arrive at the shop. Instead of Vil, a different man greets her with an unsettling, overly familiar tone. Startled, Caroline questions who this stranger is, recognizing that he clearly knows who she is. The man explains that his brother Vil has been fired, and that he is now the new owner of the shop. Caroline states flatly that she'll wait for Vil instead. As she turns to leave, the man lunges and grabs at her, trying to stop her from walking out. The cat immediately recognizes him as the brother responsible for kicking Vil out, and asks if this confrontation is really about that. The brother deflects, insisting he only wants to know where Vil is so he can repair the holy sword himself. He boasts that he'll personally maintain her sword from now on, taking over his brother's former role. The cat wonders aloud whether the little brother might actually have a chance, since only Caroline and Vil can truly see and understand it. The brother insists he is more skilled than Vil ever was and can handle the job. Alone in the shop, he gloats to himself, confident that once Caroline sees his skills, she'll keep returning to see him instead. Determined to prove himself, he begins hammering the sword aggressively, declaring he'll take everything Vil once held dear. The blade groans and creaks in pain under his rough handling, crying out that he is being too harsh. The sword's spirit erupts in fury, taking on a monstrous roaring form and screaming at him to stop. Overwhelmed, the brother panics as his arm is wrenched violently, terrified it might break under the sword's furious resistance. Caroline watches coolly, remarking that he has seriously angered the sword. The blade thrashes wildly on its own. The cat explains that Vil understood something the brother never grasped, that even tools have hearts. And Vil always treated them with respect. The sword, it says, isn't even listening to him anymore. Caroline sighs, calling him hopeless and dismissing him outright. He protests weakly that swords can't possibly get angry, declaring she'll never return to this shop again. Caroline states that Vil has always maintained the holy sword perfectly, and that the sword has a will of its own. She tells him plainly that he and his brother are worlds apart. Both she and the sword have seen through his lack of true skill. As she starts to leave, the brother begs for another chance. Someone calls out for Lady Caroline to wait, catching her off guard as she turns back in surprise. I can help continue the recap, but a few of these images aren't from this series. Image 18 is an unrelated meme-style edit Virgil with a monster energy can, so I'll skip that one and just cover the actual manhwa panels. Back at the shop, chaos has taken over. The brother stares in disbelief at the wreckage around him, insisting he is better than Vil ever was. A co-worker points out that customers can always be replaced, but the brother realizes the real problem: he has angered Lady Caroline, and she has declared she'll never return. Panic spreads through the shop. If Caroline hates them, that hatred effectively means the entire kingdom turns against them. They're finished. President Cyril arrives to even more bad news. The royal family has canceled all their orders. The brother snaps at a staff member, demanding to know how they're supposed to keep the business running now. He orders her out, blaming her for the situation, while she snaps back that she is already aware how dire things are. Someone asks who exactly canceled the orders in the first place. Meanwhile, in the forest, Poro is living comfortably. Clean clothes, a hot bath, a soft bed, and warm food, all provided in the treehouse Vil built for her. Vil explains his ability. Supreme alchemy lets him create food directly from raw ingredients, and that he is granted the House of Protection enchantment as part of his skill set. Poro marvels that her rescuer is basically a magician. Poro gushes over how amazing he is. Elsewhere, Caroline reflects to herself that it is natural for a smith of his caliber to forge thousands of high-grade works in a single day, and admits it feels good to finally have someone who appreciates that kind of effort. After driving herself into exhaustion alone, Poro continues praising him enthusiastically, calling him a truly great person. Vil reflects on his family's history. His father wasn't as gifted as his grandfather, but he was always careful and generous with his craft. His grandfather, meanwhile, was an extraordinary genius who produced miracle after miracle. Vil admits that, compared to those two geniuses, he considers himself only ordinary. All they really did was pass down a few tricks to him. He insists he is no legendary figure, just a blacksmith doing what he can, with one simple goal, to see people smile. Later, Vil finds Poro has fallen asleep mid-conversation, worn out from the day's excitement. Morning comes, Vil stretches and calls out to wake Poro, ready to start the day. He turns to find an unfamiliar woman asleep in the bed instead, and reacts in stunned confusion, having no idea who she is or how she got there. Vil awoke in alarm, discovering an unknown lady resting in his bed. As he peered nearer, he observed her cat ears and was stunned by her elegance and unknown presence. To his amazement, she abruptly welcomed him brightly, calling him Big Brother. Alarmed by her grown shape, VL moved backward, trying to understand the circumstance. She quietly stated her change, showing she had experienced a growth. VL questioned Poro about her unexpected change, and she stated that taking in energy enabled her to change, unsure about her motives. He challenged her resolve, but she confessed she had no place else to go. Flushed, Poro voiced her wish to assist and remain by Vil's side from this point. Lacking notice, she suggested rendering kittens, making Vil to worry and escape in uncertainty. Their travels went on until they observed a form amiss, and whole settlement had disappeared under floodwater. Vil encountered a odd marker signaling the settlement as dead end, increasing his worry. Reaching at the place, he found only a huge reservoir where once the settlement ought to have been, seeing residents at a gap. He and Poro went nearer to find clarity. An elderly man named himself as Arthur, stating the whole settlement had submerged. Overflow from a tempest ruined the settlement, keeping only seniors back with no way to restore. Lacking saying much, Vil strode away, causing Poro to call after him in uncertainty. He scaled a ridge and verified his thought. The around peaks made a hollow holding runoff. Gazing over the submerged lowland, he understood he could be able to alter matters. Calling his giant sacred mallet, he readied to reform the terrain itself. With resolve in his eyes, Vil started his task, amazing Poro with his determination. With a steady hold on the mallet, Vil struck with all strength, directing his strength. The giant strike slammed into the earth, rocking the earth and cutting a large pit. Several hits came next, every single expanding the opening until the terrain split open fully. As the last strike touched down, floodwater swept past recently made paths, pouring down the slopes. Residents looked on in wonder as Vil remained earlier the recently made waterway. His scheme a victory. Floodwater ran without end as the residents were cried to come back, only to find their houses wrecked. Noticing the ruin, Vil quietly stated that elderly timber buildings couldn't survive overflow. He called forth a forging gem and prepared his mallet, charging it with strength through golden hand. A radiant erupted of mana burst as he triggered total rebuilding and forging at once. Damaged wood and cracked masonry were removed, reforming themselves into a form fresh and sturdy. Vil remained confidently at the settlement entrance, saying the rebuilding finished with a few upgrades. The residents assembled in amazement, admiring the stronger structures and asking if he was a strong sorcerer. Modestly, he attributed his ability, saying it was small, past the help of Golden Hand. Although thankful, the residents demanded on rewarding him somehow for the wonder he achieved. With a glimmer of curiosity, Vil questioned if they owned any strange arms or equipment. And sinister blade trapped in charms was shown, emitting a black deadly aura. Vil entered inside the temple, seeing it was no normal artifact. It was a bound dark blade. The residents explained how a champion finally wielded it to loss and dark deity but gave up his reason. Lacking delay, Vil removed the blade, amazed by its deadly presence, yet left over calm carefully. He asked Poro to remain beyond, not wishing her revealed to the blade's risk. Although cautions from Arthur, Vil promised all he could face the blade and started the task. He called a strong method Almighty Ruin, level 1 starting the work of cleansing. As corrosion and dirt dropped away, the blade's real shape started to appear, stunning the witnesses. Vil spoke gently to the blade, identifying its suffering and remaining marks from former life fights. He stated that by knowing the blade's weight, its call could be understood, and the sword reacted. As Vil held the blade firmer, dark power swept past his limb, alarm of its insanity. A horrid entity erupted from the sword, its shape crushing, snaring all away watch. The residents stated that the blade's hex trapped a entity within, rendering it useless by many. Vil stated the real hex wasn't insanity, but limitation. The blade could only select specific users. Although request to let go, he held steady, resolved to confront the entity straight, face the blade's entity, recognizing its hex and the suffering of being forsaken. With silent kindness, he voiced sadness for its many seasons of torment and solitude. The entity, now weakened, begged for recognition and unleash from its pain. Vil stated his view that still equipment ought to give happiness, not hesitation or sorrow. With a kind grin, he vowed never to depart it isolated once more, giving faith and company, triggered golden hand, surrounding the dark blade with sacred power as all looked on in wonder. Saying his duty as a smith, he restated his purpose to repair damaged equipment. With resolve, he offered the blade a fresh title Yozora and promised to finish it entirely. The entity swept above, its shape warping as it responded to the strength around it. Addressing out almighty refinement, Vil ready to cleanse the dark core finally and for all. In the realm of Gazeta Nerga, a lady looked for Vil, feeling a form strange past her partner. At a gap, a hooded person watched the heavens, seeing the birth of a fresh sacred blade. Vil confronted a black, wild being, increasing his mallet in resistance. As the beast's strength swept, he triggered a bound talisman, unleashing a glowing impact. From it, a womanly person smoothly appeared, her shape taking form aloft. She recognized him as her maker, not just a smith. She named her own skill as Yozora, the entity of the sacred blade of gloom. Renewed past Vil's craft, changed from a dark sword to a holy blade, she now pledged devotion to Vil. The blade spirit is elegance, made the beastskin maiden in wonder, amazed that she could still view her. Vil threw the sacred blade to the maiden named Poro. She grabbed it, puzzled by her power to carry it. With surprising effort, Poro released a rapid show of blade moves as power swirled around her. She admitted that her actions seemed led by the blade, not by practice or intent. Vil stated that he had filled the blade with sacred energy, remembered his grandfather's teaching, showing that he filled sacred strength when christening the blade. And Senior commended Vil, amazed that a mortal had managed the forging of a sacred blade. Although the praise, Vil seemed torn. Recalling his mentor's unfinished goal of crafting such an artifact, he confessed the sword wasn't fully his forging, only a finishing of what existed earlier. Though pleased with Yozora's happiness, Vil promised to someday forge a sacred artifact fully of his personal. A gap. A hooded lady watched the surge of sacred power and responded with shock. She and her partner understood the sacred blade wasn't sent from the sky, it had been forged in their realm. Amazed, she processed the revelation that a mortal had managed what was intent, unthinkable. Breaking into laughter, she mocked her partner for overlooking the meaning of the event. With confidence, she stated Vil the maker. Now, the realm would at last observe his peerless skill. Carol sensed a grave danger and quickly commanded Corey to locate down the origin of the sacred sword's appearance. At a gap, Vil planned his following move, selecting to depart for the faraway realm of Madulka. Poro guided their recently obtained wagon. Thankful for the residents' surprising present, they had got it as gratitude for the assistance and help they'd offered the nearby residents. With resolve, Vil gave the sacred blade of gloom to Poro, trusting in her power to carry it. Vil gently gave Yozora to Poro, asking her to guard the blade and give happiness to people. While feeling the wind, Poro started practice, led by Yozora, who promised to train her blade work. Abruptly, a strong wind swept down from overhead, startling all aboard the wagon. A giant creature dropped with impact, rocking the earth as it touched down earlier them. Hugage overhead, a terrifying dragon stared threateningly, its aura marking the beginning of a fatal battle. Vil saw the emerald dragon diving down, identifying the danger and calling an alarm. Instead of worry, he observed the dragon's hide would be perfect for making top-quality armor. Yozora offered to face the creature, addressing it in chance for Poro to earn real battle practice. Also, Vil and Yozora urged Poro to enter the battle, keen to observe her progress. As the dragon bellowed, the pair held steady, Poro readying her blade. Yozora sat alongside her. With Yozora's encouragement, Poro rushed at the huge dragon with no delay. Unsheathing the holy sword, she readied for a critical strike. While Vil looked on carefully, she jumped top and cut the dragon's back, landing a clean strike and expressing her thrill yet. The strike hardly cut through the dense hide, the injury too minor to halt the creature. In response, the furious dragon turned its giant frame and readied for a devastating counterblow. Alarmed, Poro cried out to Yozora, uncertain of how to continue against the formidable creature. Yozora told her to faith also the blade, and her own skill reminding her to view with her spirit. Together, they accepted the gloom around them, seeking for the faintest glimmer of light in the end. Poro found focus. She directed her entity, prepared to strike with intent and power. The dragon countered, unleashing a stream of fire at the pair, making the heavens into flame. In a brilliant union of entity and metal, Poro cut through past the blaze, landing a strong strike to the dragons directly. Her strike touched down with impact, driving the creature falling to the earth in loss. Poro cheered her winning while Yozora told her she had hardly used into the blade's real strength. Though the dragon lived, the fight signaled a turning point in Poro's progress. Vil commended her attempt, recognizing it as a good beginning for a fighter, still discovering her way, smiled warmly as Yozora and Poro exchanged a silent instant of recognition and faith. Elsewhere, Carol hurried forthcoming, mindful of the sacred blade's worldwide effects and its power to change strength. She warned that if the realm discovered of Vil's skill, countries could go to conflict over him. Instead of remain, she decided to ensure her place by wedding Vil earlier others else could. Knowing his ability would attract women everywhere, Carol ran forthcoming, resolved to ask first initially. While hurrying at the kingdom's frontier, Carol requested news on the blade's position, refusing to lag back. Seeing they approached the realm of Madulka, she feared the presence of single of its top champions. Abruptly, a thunderous shriek and powerful shaking halted Vil and the people during their talk. Flashes of lightning burst from the heavens and Vil immediately recognized the crushing aura coming. Appearing from the tempest, a formidable lady carrying a sword arrived, saying she'd arrived for Sir Vil. Vil meets a lady from his former life who identifies him quickly, steps initially, assessing the creature-eared watch who places her own skill in front of Vil to protect him. She responds too slowly as the lady moves rapidly, plainly judging the watch's quickness and determination. Arms fight when the watch blocks the whip with exact moment, halting the strike earlier it touches Vil. The lady shows her strong sacred blade, intensifying the battle and marking a grave fight forthcoming word. Travels that the champion of the sacred Thunderblade has encountered Vil. Throughout the realm, several sacred blade wielders are shown, every trap to fight women who carry their power. Between them remains Lakia, the Thunder Champion, steadily holding Lightning Thorn while setting her gaze on Vil aggressive purpose, builds as other person chooses to move rapidly. The fight continues when Lakia steps initially, her whip slicing past the air as the conflict suddenly intensifies. Lakia lashes her whip broadly, snaring her rival aloft and taking handling over the duel. Advantage changes as the creature-eared fighter turns her frame and hits back while dropping. Certainty appears on Lakia's confront when the reply cannot pierce past her blade. The watch braces her own skill and launches a directed strike, creating gap between them. Strength bursts throughout the field as thunder rushes outside. Lakia continues the strike with certainty, treating the duel as an uneven training instead of a grave battle. A powerful surge of strength meets with an unseen shield, the enhanced block stopping ruin at its boundary, remaining quietly amid the vanishing waves. Vil shows his aura unharmed by the crushing impact. The field becomes quiet, as witnesses realize the level of strength that was just stopped. With no delay, Vil steps ahead and grabs the wounded watch. Vil holds the wounded watch and recognizes that the rival's power surpassed what she could face isolated watching at a gap. Lakia rejects the watch's value and rejects her as an unworthy match alongside Vil. Moving ahead, Lakia remembers an elderly promise and directly states her purpose to take Vil past winning. The unexpected offer stuns also Vil and the watch, causing uncertainty instead of delay. Determined and forceful, Lakia swings her whip once more, declaring a last battle lacking keeping back. Black storm clouds gather throughout the heavens as lightning gathers, dwarfing all below with its rising weight. Understanding hits the witnesses that Lakia had never battled in earnest, and the risk intensifies past handling. Increasing her blade, Lakia releases her final method while Vil readies himself for the collision. Thunder strikes below formed into a furious dragon-like impact directed straight at the field. The massive tempest falls at total power, rocking the terrain and signaling the beginning of a critical instant. Feeling the approaching disaster, Vil decides to unleash his total strength to stop complete ruin. A giant counterpower bursts as Vil's power meets straight with the falling lightning creature. With a small gesture, he diverts the leftover power, scattering the strike lacking effort. Surprise travels between the observers as Lakia recognizes the easy block earlier. Her focus turns to Vil's concealed ability, the sinister dark eye at last shown. Vil explains that Lakia was dark in youth. Hesitation grew past the realm, and although every attempt, the hex could not be removed, leading to an execution verdict. Punishment was postponed when the fact appeared, showing her as also a sacred blade wielder and a disaster. Vil admits the hex surpassed his powers, keeping him incapable to lift it fully. In the end, he bound the dark eye with a strong tool, saving her future for a top price. Confined for seasons, Lakia touches her breaking point and decides to risk all on fleeing her future. Meeting Vil straight, she gives her future to the man who finally rescued her from punishment. Recollections return of her escaping the realm, resolved to become powerful sufficient to remain alongside him. Gap shrinks between them as Vil quietly reaches a choice that alters all, disregarding the risk and cautions around him. Vil readies to lift the mark on Lakia's dark eye. Vil moves ahead with steady determination, asking Lakia to place her future to his decision with no delay. Teardrops mix with resolve as Lakia agrees, tying her future fully to him. The mark is freed, and the dark eye responds wildly as concealed defects are revealed. He hits lacking reserve, shaping his strength to break the hex at its center. Light brightens the heavens as also terrain securely, the dark eye broken and Lakia at last released. Surprise travels throughout her confront as sight goes back, showing bright light where once ruin finally dwelled. Remaining before her, Vil assures his aura, letting ease to displace hesitation and shock. Witnesses notice the altar quickly, seeing the dark eye has changed into a form holy. An account comes as the hex is recast, its dark form reshaped instead of removed. With precise rebuilding finish, the renewed eye remains as evidence of Vil's peerless refinement ability. Limitless thrill, Lakia requests more evidence of Vil's power, pressing nearer lacking reserve. Advantage turns into disorder, as also fall into the ground. The instant making uneasy and unruly. Thanks surges as Lakia realizes the hex is truly gone. Her emotions at last freed. Afterward that evening, Vil goes back to his forge, ringed by equipment and silent focus. Embers fly as a fresh forging takes form, marking other stories starting at his forge. A unknown man shows a strong fake mark, showing its power to make equipment past ordinary bounds. Vil rejects the proposal, feeling concealed risk back the alluring strength, and selecting caution instead. Made isolated in the darkness, the cloaked person leaves, leaving the dark mark to future and later effects. A confident lady triggered her fresh right eye, claiming it would make Vil hers if she won. With flair, she released the strength of her eye of divinity to handling time around him. Yet, her attempt failed, and she was grabbed away watch and pinned down mid-strike. Vil quietly stated that he had enhanced the dark eye and made himself immune to it. While she sulked, people commended Vil as a deity, keeping her chance fully wrecked. A huge goddess-like person remained atop a pile of skulls, her aura marking ruin and majesty. Elsewhere, Vil traveled at the realm of Maduka, preparing to meet the Empress after restoring a dark eye. As the imperial capital Carter existed into view, its giant shield shimmered over the city like a dome. Peering out the wagon, Vil was amazed to visibly detect the magical protect people couldn't perceive. Recognizing his progress, the lady stated that only skilled blacksmiths could perceive such protective constructs. At the gates of the imperial palace, Vil and his companions ascended the grand staircase at the throne room. Inside, the Empress Artemis reclined with steady command, recognizing Lakia's comeback with mild amazement. Her legacy as a warrior queen was shown. She finally defended the capital with her personal army during a disaster. Identifying Vil, Artemis welcomed him warmly after seasons apart, their reunion tinged with nostalgia. Though frail, she thanked Vil sincerely for helping Lakia, showing her duty in orchestrating the hex's removal. Although advanced medicine, still the realm couldn't heal the Empress's deteriorating lungs. With steady acceptance, Artemis confessed her future was nearing its last chapter. Though Vil promised light, she gently declined, identifying the bounds of her damaged frame. Content, she voiced ease at being able to thank him earlier passing. Earlier keeping, Vil made a respectful request, which the Empress agreed to with sincerity and grace. Vil promised to heal the Empress's damaged frame, driven by resolve and care. Though doubtful, Artemis told him that her illness wasn't a small injury to repair. Undeterred, he suggested to repair her shape instead of cure the incurable. Urged by his ally's faith, she offered her silent approval to continue. With faith granted, Vil triggered his golden hand, ready to reform future past his forge. Vil started the rebuilding, invoking his total strength with intense focus and intent. A strong surge engulfed the room, surrounding the Empress in glowing transformative power. Beyond, a brilliant explosion of 7 colors drew everyone's focus as the healing reached its peak. General Adrax stormed in, demanding clarity, only to be told that the guests were trusted by the Empress. Quickly, he shown a crisis. Dark insects approached the capital after the city's shield had collapsed. Surprise grew past the group as Vil's silence verified the danger coming the capital. Overhead the horizon, horrid dark insects with grotesque forms darkened the heavens in swarms. Worry burst between the soldiers and civilians, who rushed to retreat back the palace walls. Lakia, frozen by the horror, understood the crisis unfolding was past imagination. General Adrak commanded evacuations as Lakia demanded on fighting, resolved to confront the danger her own skill. With the shield engineers absent, the realm confronted disaster lacking technical help. Unshaken, quietly stated he would face the repair himself. General Adrak alarmed, demanding to know what Vil was attempting as he approached the tool. Disregarding the protest, Vil triggered his golden hand, unleashing glowing strength into the mechanism. As power swept, he recognized the design and identical mana circle to the single on the dark eye. Vil fearlessly launched himself into fight, striking a massive insect mid-air with raw impact. Unleashing almighty refinement, he obliterated the monster with a devastating power. Slash back at the palace, all looked on as the field lit up, stunned by the crushing show. Speaking quietly, Vil promised them the bugs were likely eradicated by the light. He shown the shield had been upgraded to auto-disintegrate threats, rendering the capital self-defended. Vil examined the damaged shield layers, concluding the sabotage was deliberate, not natural decay. Confronting Adrak with a steady grin, he hinted at guilt lacking, christening others straight. Footsteps halted the rising tension, unsheathing shocked reactions from all present. An amazing person emerged, glowing, regal, and renewed, keeping the room breathless at the sight. With serene authority, the restored lady stated her identity: Empress, Artemis of the realm. Vil and the people remained stunned as the youthful Empress Artemis shown her finished change. She stated that Vil's rebuilding didn't just heal her, it recreated her frame throughout her frame, went by the wonder. The knights below proclaimed her come back with resounding cheers. Artemis commanded the general's arrest. But he burst in rage, resisting wildly. Screaming devotion to a black strength, Adrak triggered the explosives strapped to his frame. Lakia and the people braced themselves as Vil challenged the meaning of 7 powers. With no delay, Artemis launched into action. Her strong strike directed at the traitorous general. Her top kick connected with devastating impact, launching Adrak skyward like a missile. Saying her wrath, Artemis promised that no enemy of the realm would escape her decision. Moments afterward, Adrak exploded mid-air, reduced to nothing under her crushing could. The residents cheered for Artemis's comeback, while she questioned how to repay Vil's aid. Flushed, she hinted at a form deeper, went by his humble response. Lakia and the people looked on, seeing they now confronted surprising rivalry for the Empress's spirit. Vil turned quietly, still pondering the meaning back the words 7 powers. At the headquarters of the Hassan Company, worry burst. The president of the company, overwhelmed by weight, understood that still single more gave-up client could collapse their business fully. While she tried to manage the crisis, someone forcefully knocked, demanding her focus. To her surprise, the visitor was the S-ranked master of the Adventurers Guild. Thankful for a blade crafted by Vil, the guildmaster existed to order more, giving light in a time of decline. A delivery of finely crafted swords arrived, presented with pride and hopeful anticipation. Inspecting single sword carefully, the guildmaster tested its boundary with rapid, fluid gesture. In an instant, the blade cracked upon meeting, incapable to survive real battle. Although its flawless presence, the blade was a poorly made imitation, stunning its maker. Outraged, the guildmaster stated legal action, citing endangerment of her subordinates' lives due to the deception. The company president collapsed in teardrops, begging for forgiveness and pleading to avoid a lawsuit that would destroy them. Lacking emotion, the guildmaster stated the company's future bound, incapable to ignore the betrayal. Disregarding her cries, the guildmaster made with last words, court would decide their punishment. Elsewhere, counterfeit arms were mass-produced through a forged mark. Deceiving buyers for profit abruptly, a blade cracked mid-test, exposing the deadly fraud in total view. A smith discovered single of her swords between the damaged debris, shocked to view it wrecked. Understanding strike the whole shipment had been forged with counterfeit seals, deceiving all. Furious, her match blamed her recklessness, alarmed that the Adventurers Guild would take legal action. Although the risk, the forger dismissed concerns, prioritizing profit over integrity and demanding more sales. Disgusted, the lady condemned the betrayal, defending the honor of real blacksmiths. Frustration boiled over as she warned that reckless shortcuts would destroy their customer base fully. Adjusting her glasses, she challenged the arrogant take. Did he truly believe he surpassed Vil? With sharp authority, she requested evidence forge a genuine quality a blade, not a forgery. Her tone shifted to disappointment. His incompetence had priced them all. Seeing her blindness, she at last recognized Vil's peerless ability the real foundation of their victory. Furious, Cyril rejected the idea of ever depending on Vil once more, pride clouding his decision. Holding the dark mark, he proclaimed he could transform worthless blades into legendary relics. But his match saw past the delusion, addressing out his ignorance and the worthlessness of fakes. Elsewhere, Vil silently looked on, his steady aura a stark contrast to the disorder back him. Too slowly, Cyril understood his failure just as a sharp slap cracked his arrogance. She stated the fact Vil was the more capable smith, a fact that couldn't be denied. Crushed by reality, Cyril collapsed, overwhelmed by bitterness, as Vil's title echoed in his directly. His rage spiraled out of handling black power, consuming him while a concealed person looked on with a grin. Elsewhere, Vil got a huge mountainous territory as a reward from the realm. Thankful yet humble, Vil demanded he hadn't needed any reward. Though the Empress demanded otherwise, Vil modestly declined the formal title of Lord. Though he now held dominion over Crowley, thrill filled the air as his partner peered ahead to building a fresh forge near the settlement. Upon entering, Vil observed the unsettling silence. No residents, no activity, only stillness. Lacking notice, an unexpected scream cut through the air, came next by rapid footsteps at a gap. A terrified maiden collapsed while escaping wounded and whispering a desperate plea for aid. Horrid lizard creature emerged, huge over the maiden with claws raised and a roar rocking the air. In a flash, magical barriers appeared, holding the creature inside an airtight prison of impact. Yet single claw managed to pierce past, lunging dangerously close to the terrified maiden's confront. A gap, Vil triggered his method while his ally dashed in to guard the child. Eyes blazing with fury, she condemned the strike harming a helpless maiden was past forgiveness. The maiden abruptly cried out, begging them not to harm the creature, addressing it her mentor. Her desperate plea brought the warrior to a halt, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. Glancing back, she silently awaited Vil's choice on what to do following. As they approached, the maiden understood Vil was the fresh lord, causing her and people to kneel. With raised craft and hopeful voices, the residents begged Vil to rescue them from ruin. The maiden named her own skill as Noah and assembled the residents to explain all to Vil. She shown that the monster was finally her mentor, Lagaro, who had served as settlement chief. Exposing her back, Noah showed the lizard-like hide evidence of a rising hex. The white dragon god's winds carried a mark that slowly changed victims into lizardmen. All stared solemnly at the dark creature, finally mortal. Now gave up in scaled shape. Vil went forthcoming confidently, noticing a mana circle forming around the dark person. With steady precision, he triggered a spell, holding the lizardmen in swirling magical power. Addressing out his unique ability, Vil called the strength of the golden hand. A erupted of light came next, shattering the hex as the creature's horrid shape started to peel away. Moments afterward, Lagaro remained entirely mortal once more, embracing Noah in joyful reunion. The residents rejoiced as the hex on Lagaro was at last damaged. Gratitude to Vil's strength, thrill grew rapidly, and people rushed ahead, hoping to be cured as well. With all healed, Vil readied to depart lacking fanfare. He suspected a greater danger loomed out Erekli, tied to the White Dragon deity and ancient forces. Vil and his partner arrived at the White Dragon mountain range, where once turned roots engulfed ancient ruins. They remained earlier, a lowland drowned in dense miasma. The corrupted air made it bright. The area was many forsaken by future. Protected by a shield, Vil examined a melting creature broken by the toxic surroundings. Although the sinister signs, the origin of the hex remained concealed abruptly. An unseen impact erupted from the earth, knocking Vil's partner backward. A giant shifting shape emerged from the miasma, its aura warping the earth under it. Uncertainty held Vil's partner, who gazed overhead them. A dragon shone itself, its features unmistakable. The White Dragon deity had at last arrived. Nearer inspection sent a chill down their spines. Although the title, its hide were fully blackened by corruption. With a thunderous roar, the creature released a stream of fire, scorching all in its way. Reacting swiftly, Vil jumped into action, shielding his match just as flames exploded around them. An immense wave of fire slammed down as Vil triggered his strongest block, shielding also of them from ruin. Confidently, he stated the barrier's power, an enhanced version surpassing still the capital's defenses. Quietly increasing his mallet, Vil stated the barrier's dual power to block, also miasma and physical blows. With a thunderous collision, the corrupted dragon slammed into the earth, driving shaking past the field. The dragon and Vil plunged into a concealed underground chamber below. Dust settled slowly as light cut through past the damaged cavern, showing the aftermath of the lag. Vil rose from the rubble and checked on Poro, who who lived gratitude to his barrier's protection. He watched the dragon trying to fly and challenged whether still such a creature could be dark. Recognition stunned abruptly. Vil dashed ahead, seeing a critical detail he had missed until now. As the dragon bellowed, he remembered moving on its tail, possibly the cause of its fury. Vil understood the dragon wasn't furious, it was torment. Suffering radiated from its frame instead of hostility. With steady resolve, he spoke to the wounded creature, promising to repair its dignity if offered a chance. Increasing his mallet, he approached with faith. The dragon lowered its directly, accepting his help, lacking resistance. He released almighty refinement, unleashing power that ringed the dragon's dark shape, bathed in glowing light. The dragon changed, spreading its pure restored wings once more. While the dragon admired its restored hide, Vil wondered aloud if dragons were always able to speak. The majestic creature clarified it was no normal creature, but a dragon deity, thus capable of speech. Thankful for the rebuilding, the dragon voiced heartfelt gratitude. Poro remained in wonder at the revelation. Vil casually named himself as a traveling smith, seemingly unfazed by the sacred aura, sharing a laugh. The dragon cried him Crowley. Poro chimed in, saying Vil as Lord of Crowley now. The dragon shone that the title Crowley was finally offered to him by ancient kings, a title they now exchanged, though the realm had many disappeared. The dragon stated Vil the rightful fresh lord of this terrain. Vil then questioned what caused the terrible hex that had finally corrupted him, with sadness. The dragon stated how grief consumed him after the realm gave up its ruler. In his weakened state, a black impact stunned, embedding the hex while he mourned. The dragon feared he had harmed the residents, as his hex had grew with the mountain winds. Vil reassured him quietly, insisting that the blame did not lie with him. A concealed mana circle arrived under their feet, single. Only Vil could detect, due to his ability. He stated its effects. It trapped victims and amplified powerful emotions past handling. Suspecting foul play, Vil identified the likely culprit, an organization known as the Seven Powers. Furious, the dragon bellowed a vow of vengeance at the Seven Powers for the suffering they had caused. He stunned the earth, but the dark circle still remained intact, resilient, and rooted. With precision, Vil combined two skills, Almighty Ruin and Almighty Refinement, unleashing them in a single strike. The dark mark cracked fully, scattering its magical bindings in every direction. In its place, the ancient castle remained, renewed circle gone, terrain restored, and light returned. With a warm grin, Vil asked the dragon. It was now free to arrive and go, lacking limitation. Abruptly, a sacred person named Lady Crowley arrived, amazed by the sanctuary's forging. She stated that the castle had become a celestial domain, restoring her total sacred strength on earth. Vil, amazed by his personal feat, understood he'd unknowingly built a sanctuary for a deity. Earlier, he could react more. She observed the odd symbol on his hand, the mark of the Sunday. Lady Crowley identified the mark on Vil's hand as the evidence of single who grasps the Sunday, a sigil of immense rarity. Only a handful in history had got it, rendering Vil's possession of the sigil extraordinary. Amazed, she remembered encountering a similar mark within her personal sacred territory. They explored the ruins together and soon uncovered a matching sun-formed mark embedded in gem. Confirming its authenticity, they understood it was an exact match linked throughout time and sacred domains. Lady Crowley shone the place was finally the slowly king's favorite, but its intent remained unknown. Although her efforts, the circle showed no reaction. Vil suspected a concealed mechanism. While he approached, his sigil started to glow, triggering an unexpected reaction from the floor. Tendrils of light reached out, pulling at him as the mark resonated and triggered the mark. A eruption of light engulfed Vil as an unknown hand reached at him. The following instant, Vil remained isolated within an odd circular form ringed by unknown gem walls. He went forthcoming, puzzled, and saw a huge open space filled with odd architecture and faraway towers. A call echoed in his mind, stating a telepathic ability. Vil listened, amazed by its strength. Two figures arrived, single addressing him Master Vil, showing the ability also connected their senses. Vil understood he had been displaced by the sigil, now remaining in an unknown odd city. Curious, he approached a return and verified it was a wall, reinforcing the oddness of the environment. Although the space was bright, he observed the absence of the sun, adding to his unease. Vil deduced the heavens was an illusion, part of a vivid underground artificial environment. Questioning its intent, Vil suspected the sigil was linked to the concealed Haposai forge. Vil deduced that still mighty beings like Crowley couldn't enter. hinting at strong restrictions within the forge. Although her power, a demon maiden confessed that her powers had boundaries, incapable to bypass the shield. While Vil explored more, he sensed a peculiar difference in the texture of a section near the fountain. Touching it triggered a swirling reaction, and power started to surround his frame rapidly. Earlier he could react. A spiraling entrance appeared, pulling him at an unknown destination. The demon maiden shouted in alarm, identifying the place as Single of the Seven Hells. An ultra-rare dungeon, cried the lag. Vil was stunned to learn he was the initially to ever enter, as no traces of previous visitors existed within the dungeon. While exploring the tunnel, he discovered a peculiar ore embedded in the wall, unlike anything he knew. Thrill filled him as he understood the mineral was fully unknown, perfect for crafting fresh equipment. Elsewhere, she warned that dungeon walls were said to be indestructible, rendering collection unthinkable. With the swing of his mallet, Vil triggered almighty ruin, breaking down the dungeon wall effortlessly. The demon maiden alarmed him of the crushing risk such a strong ability could pose. Unfazed, Vil casually called forth the unknown storage box, treating the event as routine. Vil stated it was part of the Golden Hand ability, though it was never meant to have extensions. Confidently, Vil listed 5 top-tier powers, keeping her fully stunned by his cheat-like talents. Vil mentioned he wasn't fond of single ability, but decided to continue with mapping the dungeon regardless. With a rapid gesture and a use of almighty refinement, he shown the task was already finished. Unrolling a talisman, he displayed the total map of the labyrinth with a confident grin. He stated that vibrations from his mallet had transmitted past the earth, tracing the form like sonar. Thou commended as godlike. Vil modestly stated he was simply skilled at causing as a smith. Vil returned from the dungeon past the entrance, welcomed warmly by Poro, who rushed to embrace him. Teardrops welled in her eyes as she clung to him. Overwhelmed with ease, Vil was shocked to learn that although only an hour passed for him, 10 days had gone by beyond. To effort her worries, Vil promised a present as a heartfelt apology. The enchanted item enabled them to speak throughout any gap still from within a dungeon. Poro hugged Vil tightly, overwhelmed with thanks for the telepathic present he had created. Through ore from the dungeon walls, Vil crafted a hair ornament capable of indestructible many-gap communication. Impressed, Crowley could hardly keep up as Vil quietly made other surprising requests. Elsewhere, in Lamont's settlement, and Senior pushed himself hard, resolved to repair the damaged houses rapidly. Abruptly, a lady cried out in amazement as someone started helping her, lacking notice. A majestic white dragon dropped from the heavens, carrying Vil and his allies on its back. The residents were stunned, identifying it as the fabled white dragon deity. Hesitation grew rapidly, as rumors of a hex around the dragon caused worry. Saddened, the dragon readied to depart, trusting its aura only brought misfortune. Vil stated the hex damaged, and the residents rejoiced, admiring him for lifting their weight, promised the residents that the white dragon deity had suffered too, and existed seeking forgiveness. He gently questioned the dragon if she wished to apologize her own skill, knowing her spirit. Suggesting a solution, he requested a piece of her level to assist as material. With a soft glow, he grabbed the shimmering level and readied for making. Unleashing almighty refinement, Vil triggered a strong reaction to make a form meaningful from her present. The white dragon deity rose tall between rocky peaks, her frame emitting with sacred brilliance. A magnificent fountain burst at her base, casting shimmering light in all 7 colors. Residents bathed in the waters, instantly soothed and invigorated by its magical touch. Vil shown he had wielded her hide to forge the fountain, granting lasting healing to the residents. Confidently, he proclaimed the wonder any illness or injury could now be cured by her holy present. As residents bowed in thanks, Noah promised words of peace, accepting the white dragon deity's heartfelt apology. The dragon gently thanked Vil for guiding her past redemption. Abruptly, a messenger owl touched down on Vil's shoulder, carrying an urgent note. Vil opened the letter, amazed to find it was sent from the realm. The message warned of Lady Caroline's grave injury in fight, requesting Vil's immediate comeback. Rough, apologizing to her trusted blade, Kaminari. With a last farewell, she smiled, prepared to give all. The horrid creature rose once more, shattering the earth under it with every devastating movement. Eyes glowing, Lakia called sacred Time Lord's gaze, locking the creature's actions for a brief instant. She shouted the activation blade art, unleashing a surge of mana that engulfed the field. Crackling power ringed her frame as she launched skyward, her last strike gathering at total impact. With thunderous strength, she called forth Tempest Serpent Jefe Mungandra, striking down upon the enemy with sacred fury. The serpent's collision slammed into the earth, driving waves throughout the field in a blinding surge. A giant pit made, engulfed in smoke, silence following the disorder as dust filled the air. Hovering overhead, Lakia exhaled faintly, drained but remaining. A black shadow dropped back her. Tentacles cut through her frame, aloft, her power spent. She had no power to resist. Dropping helplessly, she whispered an apology to Kaminari, seeing this fight was over for her. A surge rippled past the field, stirring an unknown impact buried large within the tempest. Lakia's eye flashed as time warped. Against all odds, she remained once more puzzled but prepared. Lacking a word, she went ahead, her blade steady, Vil quietly watching from back. Abruptly, countless tentacles burst, aiming to crush the figures below as a fresh creature emerged. Vil held his mallet, gazing above, whispering a question: what is a blade meant to be? Corey's core glowed as it rose, merging with Caroline's wish to guard. Caroline accepted him past teardrops, overwhelmed by his comeback. Vil faced the monster, questioning its happiness in making ruin and suffering. His steady broke. With steeled eyes, he readied to unleash his real strength. Vil remained earlier, the giant tentacled monster as its limbs lashed out, scattering warriors and tearing into the sand. A lady with an eye patch rushed ahead, holding her blade tightly. She knew her attacks were strong, but this creature was no normal creature. She stunned with all her could, slicing the horrid limb in erupted of explosive impact that echoed throughout the field. To her surprise, the severed tentacle twitched. It peered like it was regenerating only slower than earlier. Understanding dawned. Vil had upgraded her blade, Lightning Thorn. Now it wasn't just repaired, it was stronger than ever. With a single strong swing, the cat-eared warrior named Porotor passed the monster's flesh, severing limbs and bursting the swollen sacks. Alarm echoed throughout the field, meeting with the tentacles would sap the power of any sacred blade. Poro prepared her sword anyway, unsheathing on her courage. Abruptly, the creature's center turned, reforming into the shape of a giant sacred lion with glowing eyes and thunderous moves. Dozens of tendrils erupted from its back, around the defenders as the lion's roar split the air. Overwhelmed, the warriors scrambled. The sheer number of enemies made them with no choice but to lag back. Vil went forthcoming, invoking almighty refinement to enhance his personal frame. He asked the people to remain back and confronted the lion-like creature isolated. In a blink, he disappeared from the monster's view. Earlier it could react. Vil had already repositioned himself, amazing all with his quickness. The creature retaliated, slamming its giant claw down, driving waves throughout the earth. Effortlessly, Vil countered with the exact strike, tearing past the air with enhanced power that cracked the approaching strike. Quietly, he stated his strength. Almighty refinement turned him into a superhuman. Still, if only for a brief instant. A dragon's call halted Vil. It recognized the lion's condition, a dark creature lashing out in suffering, just as it finally had. Vil watched the creature and identified the corrupted jewel embedded in its forehead. That gem pulsating with black power was the origin. Seeing, it was rooted to the brain. Vil hesitated. A mismove could inflict agony. The eye patch warrior observed it resembled her personal dark eye. A glimpse of the curse's magical form shone a disturbing wild design, intentionally crafted to cause torment. Tension grew. The creature's claws tightened. Its frame tensed, driven by pain and fury past handling. The lion lunged ahead in a frenzy, its claws slashing wildly as rage consumed its mind. Vil held steady. With no delay, he triggered also almighty refinement and almighty ruin, enlarging his blade mid-air to match the creature's strength. The collision stunned Real. A thunderous strike cracked the dark gem embedded in the lion's forehead, driving it collapsing backward. While dust settled, the people rushed in. The creature stirred, no longer aggressive, just exhausted. Vil approached quietly. He smiled gently, saying the hex damaged, and telling the lion to rest. Peace had at last been restored. The lion stirred, speaking for the initial time. To Vil's amazement, she shone her own skill as a lioness. Thankful and sincere, she thanked Vil for unleashing her from the pain and insanity of the dark jewel. She promised they would meet once more, her eyes shining with warmth as Vil smiled and waved her away. At a gap, the girls looked on, single sighing in amazement. Still, a lioness now seemed to admire Vil. Just as the instant lightened, an unexpected erupted burst, nearby other danger appearing, shattering the brief peace they had earned. From under the earth, a grotesque, tentacled being emerged in fury, shrieking in amazement over its cracked jewel. Hovering under the sun, it raged aloud, puzzled how the lioness lived after its dark mana was undone. Vil quietly went forthcoming, showing the fact the being had stayed concealed through its creations to move remotely. Vil smirked, claiming he simply read the form of a shoddy item. The being was rattled. He shouldn't have known anything. Vil remained unfazed. He promised to dismantle its flawed shape, addressing its turned design unworthy of future itself. The dark being stated its purpose to destroy the holy relics. Alarm Vil not to remain in its way. Unshaken, Vil raised his blade with resolve. He would take responsibility and purge the danger earlier him. Tendrils lashed out, threatening to consume anything they touched. The people promised aid, but Vil warned them to remain back. Changing tactics, he triggered metal spear forest, driving sharpened constructs flying from the earth at the enemy. To his surprise, the spears passed harmlessly. The creature's shape had somehow slipped past his strike. Earth burst in a powerful surge as Vil's failed strike triggered surprise and worry between his allies. The dark being mocked him, boasting that only sacred objects could ever harm a godlike being such as itself. Vil reasoned rapidly, if gods could only be harmed by holy relics, then those relics held the key. With resolve, he triggered Golden Hand. His call rang out as he connected with a legendary blade, sacred mallet, MJ Fanir, Power swept as he launched ahead, the dark foe feeling the danger ready to intercept. Vowing to destroy the holy mallet earlier it stunned. A sacred blade cut through past the dark creature, making it to scream in agony. It couldn't comprehend how Vil wielded such a blade. Quietly, Vil stated, the mallet was his real holy artifact, while the sacred blade was a form he forged himself. Though it was only a replica, his mana enabled him to copy an artifact's strength for a limited time, just sufficient to damage a sacred being. He triggered his fifth ability, Infinite Forgeries, calling countless memory cubes into the air. Every cube stored the core of relics. Through Golden Hand, Vil could recreate any of them. Dozens of sacred arms swept into view, forged by energy and Vil's ability. Temporary copies, yet strong sufficient to defy gods. The dark being hovered at the center, ringed from every side by replicated relics, swords, spears, and shields, all gleaming with sacred light. Gasps burst. Names like Aegis, Gungnir, and Excalibur were recognized. Vil stated it over, confident in his crushing arsenal. But the enemy refused loss. With the last outburst, tendrils burst from below, aiming to drag Vil down. Unfazed, Vil released his relics. Sacred strength tore past the tendrils, silencing the scream of the dark foe. Still under the earth, Vil's forgeries emerged, appearing just many sufficient to strike earlier vanishing. A tempest of holy replicas launched at the dark being. It flinched, seeing resistance was futile. As the last strike touched down, the creature screamed in loss. With single last danger, it disappeared in a surge. Vil remained unharmed. Although Vil's energy had already begun to come back, he declined assistance and told the people to aid every other instead. Their argument rapidly dissolved into unified worry. All three ringed Vil, steadily insisting he gaze on resting, refusing to let him push himself anymore. Taken aback by the unexpected teamwork, Vil looked on as their craft went in sync. Moments ago they had argued, now they cared for him with no delay. Entering with grace, Queen Artemis approached. She cried for a total examination, christening Vil the realm's prized person. A call from nearby challenged her take, questioning when Vil had ever become part of her realm. Accusations stirred the room as a lady steadily stated that Vil belonged to the realm, not the realm. Trying to hide her feelings, she tried to mask her reaction. Though she promised calm words, her thoughts swirled with uncertainty about Vil's rising status. Vil, with a kind look, reassured her. His silent vow to always look after Caroline grabbed her fully away. Watch heat swept past her confront. The words overwhelmed her, driving her emotions spiraling in every direction. Lacking notice, she dashed from the room, keeping back a trail of steam. Vil sat puzzled, wondering if his small promise had meant more than he understood. Queen Artemis commended Vil, addressing him their many revered champion. After saving the realm from disaster, she couldn't bear to let him go unnoticed. A warrior alongside her emphasized the danger they confronted, stating the realm would have fallen lacking his intervention. Also, women promised sincere thanks. While Artemis remained dignified, the other bowed deeply, showing heartfelt respect. Vil offered a modest grin. Vil denied having done anything worthy of praise, insisting his actions weren't special. Downplaying the winning, Vil stated that his skills just happened to reply Tsukumogami's. In his view, it was luck. Vil brushed away the praise once more, insisting it was the holy artifact, not his personal power, that brought winning. His humility drew chuckles from the people. Still, the queen couldn't aid but agree. Vil's mindset was truly unlike others they'd known. Elsewhere, disorder burst. A lady was thrown out wildly, landing hard on the timber floor as the door slammed shut back her. Desperation filled her call as she begged beyond the shop. With no place else to turn, she begged for someone to visit the Hassan Company. AT newspaper headlines showed the fact Hassan Company teetered on the boundary of bankruptcy. Their later appeared bleak, lacking urgent aids. Stern lady rejected the plea coldly. The woman slammed the door shut, condemning the Hassan Company as a business built on deception. Made isolated in the street, the lady collapsed in loss. With no smiths to forge and no buyers left over, all light seemed gave up. Teardrops welled in her eyes, but her determination returned. Rising from the earth, she decided there was still a single person she could turn to. The streets bustled with future as she hurried past the city, weaving former life unaware crowds, her destination steadily in mind. In the spirit of the market remained a strong person, his aura commanding focus. Embers flickered as he held an unknown blade. With a sinister grin, the man chuckled to himself. His dark hand pulsed with power as he stated the market total of keen customers. Calling with wild enthusiasm, he commended his wares, boasting their value was sufficient to die for. Two of them, intrigued by the commotion, decided to approach. The man welcomed them eagerly, claiming today would be their lucky day. Vil dramatically unveiled a collection of extravagant arms. Blades, guns, and enchanted gear glistened under the light. Gasps came next. Between the items were legendary relics Excalibur, Jifei Bolg, Levitine, and Aegis, all displayed in single place. With manic power, the vendor proclaimed every legendary blade available for just 1,000 gold pieces, eyes gleaming with greed. He turned to his match, promising unimaginable riches. Doubts rose between the buyers. Some challenged the origins of the items he flaunted so confidently. To prove the arm's strength, a customer went forthcoming. Although limited magical ability, he readied a spell and prepared the sword for a test. The blade stunned the crystal with impact, cracking the return. An instant of silence came next as all held their breath. Abruptly, the crystal cracked wildly. Watching with eerie satisfaction, the vendor's sinister grin returned, reveling in the disorder he'd sparked. The crowd swept ahead, calling over every other. All clamored to grab a legendary blade, captivated by their supposed strength and price. With a sly grin, the vendor ready to mark a sale. Just as Excalibur was about to be exchanged, someone shouted, stopping the instant, keeping the blade top. The buyer shown damage along its boundary. She stated it a fake and refused to pay a single coin. Uncertainty grew rapidly. Whispers turned into outrage as people observed. Their arms were also chipped after minimal use. She emphasized that real legendary arms radiated strength by touch isolated. Cries of complete junk echoed as the fake blade cracked. Furious, the crowd accused the vendor of scamming them, calling that he wasn't a real smith. Sweating and broadly eyed, he tried to defend himself, saying he was the directly smith of the Hassan company. He demanded still gods would envy his skills. The crowd wasn't convinced. Rumors about Hassan's bankruptcy appeared, and voices requested a boycott. Accusations of fraud burst from all directions. While tension spiked, the vendor clenched a form tightly. A magical reaction exploded in his understand, blinding and loud. Roaring with desperation, he held his blade top, surging with power. He screamed that his skill was undeniable. The lady stormed in, furious, calling at Sechin for his reckless behavior. The woman couldn't believe he was still clinging to such desperation. Sechin defended himself, claiming all he did was to save the company. She ignored his outburst and demanded there was only single solution made. Keeping up a newspaper, she shone the headline featuring Veal. Their only light now was to find him and make matters right. By apologizing, lashed out and kicked her throughout the room. Her desperate cry dropped on deaf ears as he snapped. Confront turned in fury. He screamed curses, refusing to acknowledge Vil as anything but a danger to his pride. Sechin exploded with rage, denouncing Vil, legendary arms, and all associated with him. He screamed that he'd instead die than propose any apology. Siracle arrived, confronting him straight earlier. While Sechin barked insults, she remained her earth, refusing to back down. With wild eyes, Sechin hurled a bowl in fury. Yet the tension broke when Siracle's words touched down heavier, addressing him a disappointment. Her call echoed with finality. Ringed by imagined figures of decision, she stated him talentless and stripped of any leftover respect. Stunned, Sechin looked on as she strode away. Worry set in. He begged her to halt, afraid of being made fully isolated. Siracle strode away with steady determination, ordering Sechin to remain back. Her call was last. She would confront Vil and apologize isolated. Glancing back briefly, she held back teardrops. Her choice wasn't easy, but it was the right single. Sechin collapsed to the earth, screaming her title. Thoughts of worthlessness consumed him. Skill, ability, strength he had none, and the realm rejected him for it. His dark limb burst wildly as he gave up handling. Agony turned his frame, and the mutation deepened. With insanity in his eyes, he welcomed disorder. Shouts rang out nearby, as frightened witnesses cried for guards, feeling a form had gone terribly amiss. Sechin's mind snapped fully. With a turned grin, he stated his purpose: to steal the skill and power of people. A steam locomotive chugged throughout a top-gem bridge, slicing past the huge peaks. Inside the train, passengers sat in silence. A cloaked person rested near a window, while a maiden with glasses sat alongside him, her craft folded in her lap. Her expression was troubled as she whispered a title in her thoughts. A form lingered in her spirit: regret, or perhaps a longing tied to someone named Vil nearby. A young maiden cried out, keeping up a damaged doll. The directly had detached, the dress torn. Her mother examined the damage, sighing at the lack of any equipment to fix it. With no delay, the cloaked man remained up. Quietly, he approached the maiden, extending his hand. With a steady gesture, the man placed his glowing hand over the damaged doll. The doll, finally damaged, now peered, as if it had never been damaged. The maiden looked on in wonder, while the lady in glasses stared at his hand, visibly shaken by its familiar presence. Amazement filled the passengers. The child clutched the restored doll, thanking him eagerly. Her mother promised thanks, but the man brushed it away with modesty. Vil turned away with a soft grin, admitting he could never ignore someone in misfortune. The object was simply part of who he was. Curiosity overcame the lady in glasses. She questioned if he was the renowned smith, identifying the craftsmanship of his golden hand. A memory appeared in her mind. Vil's right hand finally held a unique strength. She stared at the stranger's hand, wondering if he exchanged the same power, remaining earlier. She hesitated but apologized for the unexpected request. Her tone was grave, her posture respectful. With resolve, she promised him a place in a merchant guild, asking if he would task under her banner. Vil tilted his directly and smiled, casually recalling the rumors that her guild had been plagued with misfortune recently. Making away, he declined with a soft apology, expressing no purpose to enter any organization no matter the proposal. The hooded man spoke gently, showing he was on a travels not of escape, but to make a form meaningful. His words carried weight and intent. Went by his aura, the lady murmured how much he resembled Vil. She apologized, admitting her worries stemmed from carrying a child and lacking options. He paused, intrigued. To him, children were fascinating creations between the many profound matters humans could give into the realm. Seeking into his cloak, he extended a hand, giving her a small wrapped object as a present. It was candy. He asked her it would effort her entity, because he could never walk former life someone in distress. She accepted the candy with delay, then placed it in her mouth. The sweet taste amazed her, and for an instant, she grew silent. Abruptly, a sight opened earlier her eyes, a bright, dreamlike field of flowers swaying under a vivid heavens. Happiness welled up inside her. The weight she'd carried seemed to lift. Her eyes sparkled with warmth, feeling truly happy for the initial time in a while. As the illusion faded, the man remained. He quietly informed her he would be getting away at the following halt. A concerned passenger challenged his early departure, but he reassured them with a grin, thanking them for their kindness earlier walking away. With a kind tone, the man told the little maiden to treasure her doll, his eyes peeked from under the cloak, warm and sincere. He waved goodbye as he exited the train. The maiden and the people reacted with cheerful farewells, seeing how kind he was. Abruptly, a loud shriek broke the peace. The maiden with glasses, now remaining isolated, peered back in alarm as the wind tore past the wagon. The train's engine slammed wildly into the earth. Metal crumpled and steam erupted into the air with explosive impact. Carriages turned and cracked throughout the tracks. Wheels scattered, flames burst. Disaster had stunned moments after the stranger's departure. Disorder engulfed the wreckage. Survivors stepped past the debris, trying to aid every other as timber beams and cracked metal collapsed around them. At a gap, a black person approached the burning remains. Bodies lay motionless, smoke-dense in the air. A sinister grin curled under the hood. He whispered of a tragedy crafted by his personal hand, single-born from the hex of Shichifukujin. Abruptly, a erupted of wind scattered the smoke. A high bird-like dragon soared overhead, its wings slicing past the heavens. Upon the dragon's back remained the boy, his eyes broadly in amazement. Earlier him unfolded a scene that requested action and retribution. The boy peered down upon the devastation. The wreckage stretched throughout the terrain, damaged cars buried under storm clouds of smoke and ash. A grim expression made as he took in the scene. The ruin was worse than he had imagined. Single of his companions questioned if they ought to remain for the Imperial Rescue Squad to arrive. They discussed evacuating the wounded initially. Other call halted, alarmed that delays could price lives. They couldn't afford to hesitate in a circumstance like this. With resolve, the boy triggered his golden hand. Light swept from his limb as he readied to move swiftly and save lives. Dozens of magical circles arrived over the wreckage, every single glowing as they hovered overhead the fallen train cars. Every glyph locked onto a victim. They identified internal bleeding, directly trauma, spirit failure, still a pregnant lady between the wounded. With his eyes shut tight, the boy analyzed all the data. Within moments, he entirely grasped the extent of the casualties. With resolve, he plunged his golden hand into the array. Power swept, and the rebuilding mana ignited at total strength. Pieces of debris removed into the air. Under his handling, the cracked remains started to realign and restore in aloft. Those finally lifeless started to stir. Bodies shifted, wounds closed, and minor breaths returned. The dead were pulled back from the brink. Moments afterward, the train finally wrecked remained whole once more on the tracks. Its polished frame gleamed as if unharmed by tragedy. A cat-eared maiden jumped onto Vil, hugging him tightly. Her call beamed with happiness, admiring him for restoring all in a single sweep. He smiled modestly, suggesting his level could have increased, but said the real reward was noticing all grin once more. Then, someone cried out his title quickly. A fresh problem was about to begin. From the earth below, a maiden gazed up at the falling dragon. Her eyes widened as it carried familiar figures past the heavens. Vil and the lady with glasses stared in amazement. The maiden coming was someone they hadn't expected to view. Her title dropped from their lips in alarm. The woman dropped to her knees and bowed deeply, her call trembling as she apologized over and over. Emotion overwhelmed her. Teardrops streamed down the lady's cheeks. She whispered the girl's title once more, shaken by the unexpected reunion. Lacking decision, Vil went forthcoming and extended his hand, silently inviting her to remain once more. With teardrops still in her eyes, the lady stated that all passengers would need thorough checkups at the Imperial Hospital. Steady yet steady commanded that Shiriko be transported initially due to her pregnancy. His priority was bright. Abruptly, the lady dropped to her knees in front of him. She admitted her mistake, the weight of her guilt too much to contain. She went on apologizing as her frame collapsed ahead. Vil remained frozen, uncertain how to respond to the sight of her breaking down. As the evacuation started, Vil instructed the team to prioritize women and children, ensuring the people waited for the following rescue wave. Vil remained silently, watching the dragon depart into the heavens. A steady expression masked the weight of all that had happened. Making to the restored train, he muttered an intent to himself. The return was pristine, but a form about it still seemed amiss. Examining the wheels, he observed no physical tampering. The tracks were bright. There had been no natural reason for the derailment. He entered inside single of the carriages. His partner came next, concerned by his unexpected alter in demeanor. Inside, the air was dense with residue. Vil narrowed his eyes. A form or someone had made back magical traces. Vil questioned his partner if she could view the black haze remaining in the train. She peered puzzled. There was nothing visible to her, seeing he was the only single who could view it. Vil came next, the trail of black power as it extended outside from the wagon. The sinister mist reached distant throughout the landscape. Images of the wounded flickered in his mind, stirring unease within him. He abruptly remembered the doll, the single he had repaired. Now it lay still once more, strangely unsettling as if dark. With no delay, Vil launched into gesture. He commanded his partner to come back to the capital quickly. Past a swirl of teleportation power, Vil entered out, carrying the unconscious fox-eared maiden in his arms. Smoke rose at a gap as a large hospital existed into view. Signs of disturbance ringed the entrance, and a form sinister seemed to linger past the gates. Within moments, the maiden recovered and brightly remained alongside Vil, her power restored. Upon entering, Vil observed a odd mist trailing past the halls. Although its aura, none of the residents inside arrived to sense the rising danger. Abruptly, a maiden saw Vil rushing up the stairs and cried out his title in amazement. Vil stopped earlier, a bound door, dense fog curling at his feet. His sharp instincts asked him this was the origin point of the disturbance spreading past the hospital. With cautious moves, he pushed the door open. A dense black mist poured out from the room. A faint person existed into view. A young maiden sat alongside a bed, enveloped in gloom. The maiden remained motionless, her eyes blank. A lifeless lady lay alongside her. Quietly, the child muttered that her mother had stopped moving. Vil held back, studying the odd object in the girl's hand. His partner tried to approach, but he warned her to halt. A terrifying aura emerged. The doll in the girl's arms changed, showing a grotesque front with glowing eyes and turned hair. Pulsing with dark power, recognized the danger. He stated it was a dark item, similar to the Lion Guardian's hex, known to give misfortune and corruption to its surroundings. As Vil approached and questioned for the doll, the maiden clutched it firmer, refusing, softening his tone. Vil reassured her. Vil claimed he was a doctor single who could treat dolls and understood her worry. With steady resolve, he asked her the doll was torment in its current state. Vil vowed to heal it, giving light in place of hesitation. Vil gently inspected the dark doll, dismayed at how a form cherished by a child had been turned into a vessel of malice. A strong mana circle made under the doll, emitting intense power. The hex resisted, writhing as if alive. With resolve in his eyes, Vil slammed his crafting tool into the mark. He shouted his command to pierce and reconstruct, shattering the mana circle in single critical strike. As the dark shape crumbled, light engulfed the doll. Its grotesque features melted away, showing a peaceful, innocent person renewed from the corruption. Nearby, the maiden gasped suddenly. The oppressive fog removed, and her mother's lifeless shape started to stir finally more. The mother awoke, puzzled but alive. Her daughter jumped into her arms, crying out in ease. Nearby, Vil held up the restored doll, now shining with pure light. Vil stated it had been changed into a blessing-bringing guardian, beaming with happiness. The little maiden presented the healed doll to her mother, confidently stating how the kind young man had fixed it. She remembered an earlier encounter on a magical train, where once a masked stranger had repaired the doll after its directly was damaged. Vil listened silently, his expression darkening. A cloaked person arrived in his mind, someone who tampered with the doll earlier. Thanks poured from mother and daughter alike. Also remained amazed that the healing existed not from medicine, but past the strength of a restored doll. Smiling brightly, the doll winked and promised words of praise, addressing her rescuer, a real doll doctor. Her elegant shape now radiated charm and light. Surprise grew past the room. No single expected the doll to speak, especially not the single who had remade her. Fox Maiden clapped her craft, admiring Vil's brilliance. She admired how he breathed future into a form finally dark. A gap, the bespectacled maiden remained frozen, increasing the dead and granting future to a doll such strength surpassed mortal bounds. Down the corridor, a young boy cried out in amazement, his legs, finally lifeless, now went freely as he ran into his mother's arms. Patients throughout the hospital experienced miracles, suffering disappeared, sight returned, and incurable conditions reversed. No words escaped her lips, but the maiden in glasses stared, stunned. Silent wonder filled the space where once logic failed her. Whispers grew bolder in her spirit. The woman didn't just admire Vil's powers, she desired him. Laughter echoed nearby, ringed by cheer and praise. He turned at the sound of his title, unaware of the silent obsession forming back him. Eyes trembling with honesty, she at last admitted what she had never managed to say: she had been searching for him all along. Vil didn't slow his moves, lacking making. He apologized curtly. He had no time for sentiment. Desperation poured out as she bowed her directly, admitting her mistake. Since his departure, business had collapsed and her match's skills failed to sustain the guild. She extended a hand with light, pleading for him to come back, not just for business, but to remain alongside her finally more. Only silence came next. Then existed his answer, short, cold, and last. He refused. Feigning uncertainty, she challenged his anger, her tone light but her eyes sharp back the lenses. Her grin turned as she recognized betrayal. She claimed love, yet confessed he had every right to be furious. The fox-eared maiden went forthcoming, slamming her foot and calling. Sufficient was sufficient, this lady had overstepped. Fury burst, she lashed out, scolding the lady for daring to come back after abandoning Vil. Her devotion wasn't a form to mock. Rising to her personal block, the lady shouted back. She claimed to owe Vil her future, and refused to let someone from other guild take him away. She stared forthcoming, calls steady but determined. No single, she claimed, understood him better than she did. Scoffing, she accused him of betrayal, warping the circumstance to suggest he was the single who had went on. Outrage swept. The Fox Maiden told her suddenly that it was she who initially turned her back on Vil. That choice had effects, no longer able to remain quiet. The Fox Maiden stated Vil had greater matters to do. Wasting time on someone like her wasn't single of them. She dropped to her knees, pleading with teardrops and fists against the floor. Begging him to come back earlier, always gave up. Vil's call dropped, silent but steady. He asked her the words she dreaded. It was already too slowly. He told her of her personal declaration. The downfall of her guild was her weight to fix, not his to carry. A last glance over his shoulder, expression unflinching. From this point, their paths would never cross once more. Collapsed on the floor, she whispered apologies to all. Guilt and regret drowned her requests. All power made her, as she stated, her own skill worthless, ringed by those she finally led. She now had no place to remain. Lacking notice, a giant sphere exploded into the room, wildly slamming her into the wall. Dust and power burst from the collision. Lying crushed under the unknown orb, she cried out in agony. Uncertainty grew between the people as they rushed ahead in alarm. Vil and his partner entered back. The orb pulsed unnaturally. A form sinister was brewing inside it. It wasn't over yet. Understanding stunned, Vil challenged her, demanding if she had encountered the man wrapped in cloth. Her response was weak and incoherent. Whatever she had touched, it was dark. Vil clenched his fist. This was the task of that man once more. A dark mark triggered under the orb, pulsing with ancient glyphs. A form inside stirred, responding to the black power. Liquid and steam erupted outside as the mass wildly swelled. The shape inside turned, reforming itself as tendrils of fluid lashed out. Moments afterward, A grotesque, bloated creature emerged. Its frame dripped with slime, hardly stable, its breath heavy and unnatural. Abruptly, the shape collapsed into a wet thud, showing a malformed infant-like person writhing on the earth. Earlier they could react. The creature mutated more. It's directly enlarged grotesquely, mouth gaping open in a horrid wail as it towered earlier them. Disorder bursts as a grotesque creature lunges into the room, endangering all nearby. Vil rapidly moves in, pulling a frightened lady and child out of harm's way. With no delay, a beastman dashes ahead and lands a devastating kick, hurling the monster to the earth. He points the civilians at safety and instructs people to summon aid. The urgency in his call spurs them into gesture as the dust begins to settle. Also, fighters brace themselves. An unknown silhouette builds from the wreckage forthcoming, sprawled on the floor. A masked lady clutches her abdomen in alarm, puzzled. She mutters about a child that shouldn't exist. The grotesque baby-like creature crawls ahead, its frame dripping and misshapen, eyes locked on the residents nearby. Rising to its total size, the abomination stretches out a limb at the shocked lady, causing Vil and his partner to rush inside. Its expression turns unnaturally as its skin pulsates and its mouth contorts. A odd reaction begins to take over. A loud, distorted cry bursts from the creature's mouth, forming a wave of weight that forces all to cover their ears. Vil grits his teeth, seeing the creature has triggered a sound-based mana, just as a glass object nearby shatters wildly. Although no chanting, the infant's cries unleash intense magical impact, pressing down on all nearby. Vil realizes the strength isn't normal. Covering single ear, he theorizes that a hex placed by the masked man is making the child's mana to spiral out of handling. The mother begins to understand the candy she ate could have triggered the change. Vil grits his teeth still. If the parent is guilty, he believes the child holds no fault in this tragedy. Gazing at the distressed lady, he states that she is the only single who can steady the child. Teardrops streamed down the mutated child's confront as it cried out for its mother. Vil quietly repeated that the child was innocent. Slowly, the lady started to move, her legs trembling as she crawled nearer to the crying creature. Seeking the child's side, she froze in delay. The creature clung to her, sobbing as its oversized craft held her close. With a hand on its directly, she promised a quiet apology, accepting the creature as her personal. The child's cries gradually softened. At a gap, Vil and his companions looked on in silence, expressions steady as the disorder at last subsided. A group of adventurers bursts into the room, misjudging the circumstance. Single of them shouts, mistaking the child for a monster. Acting on instinct, the party releases a coordinated magical assault, hurling flames and power blasts at the perceived danger. Vil responds instantly, generating a strong shield to intercept the approaching attacks. The beastman remains prepared back him. The protect holds, deflecting the spells. Earlier they strike the weeping child. The creature stares in alarm, clutching its craft. Within the disorder, the mother moves ahead, her frame burning with magical backlash as she tries to guard her child. A devastating magical surge engulfs the mother, tearing past her defenses and driving her frame flying in a eruption of power. Vil and the beastman look on in alarm as her person is consumed by flames, her sacrifice keeping back only scorched air. Child's eyes widen in horror. Clutching her remains, he trembles, then begins to burn from within, as grief turns to rage. The attacking adventurers freeze, their faces pale as they realize the real weight of their actions. Abruptly, the child's shape mutates more, swelling with unstable power. A horrid change begins earlier, everyone's eyes. A shockwave bursts from the changed child, creating Vil and his allies to protect themselves from the intense eruption of power. The building shakes wildly as the released mana travels outside in wild pulses, cutting rings of impact into the surroundings. Explosive strength radiates above, shattering all in its way. The ceiling begins to collapse under the weight. A magical mark activates nearby, triggering a mechanism. Twin pillars birth as a mallet falls with a thunderous collision. When the light brightens, the child lies motionless. Vil moves ahead carefully, while the people look on in stunned silence. Flames quietly flicker around his frame as he remains, mallet in hand, emitting quiet fury. Uncertainty travels between the people as they realize all has reverted to ordinary. Eyes blazing, he explodes with anger, demanding to know what they were thinking, attacking a helpless child. Alarmed by the outburst, the group stumbles back in hesitation, lacking a word. He and his partner walk former life them, disregarding their rushed apologies. From the floor, the lady groans, trying to sit up. Suffering lingers, but so does awareness of who helped her. Crawling ahead, a smiling baby touches for her, Eyes sparkling with recognition, happiness softens her expression. Craft trembling, she stares in amazement at the child now entirely mortal. Warmth floods her eyes as ease sets in, smiling brightly. The baby seems peaceful. No trace of the horrid shape remains. Certainty shines in Ville's steady gaze as he notes the mana is now dormant. Back them. Her call calls out, asking him to remain. He continues walking, moves steady alongside his partner. Teardrops held back. She gratitude him with a kind grin for protecting her child. From starting to end lacking making, he responds gently. It wasn't done for her. Gently, she apologizes for her former life mistakes. Thanks fills her call as she watches him walk away in silence. Cradling her child, she speaks gently about going home, where once loved ones remain. The baby giggles, unaware of the disorder that had passed. Elsewhere, in a silent prison under the Capitol, guards escort someone past gem halls at a cell. A heavy lock clicks shut, slumped on the cold floor. A lady listens as the watch warns her to remain put until bail is paid. From the following cell, a wild-haired man mutters to himself, claiming skill, disregarding the scoffs of a hardened inmate nearby. Black robes rustle as an unknown person approaches, speaking with silent pity. No single, he says. Notices the attempt of the desperate turned by envy and frustration. The prisoner lashes out screaming for strength and skill that was never his. Arms flail as he requests still stronger items. The cloaked man reminds him that all possible has already been offered. Images of those he resents swirl in his mind. Rage boils over as he vows to steal all from those who mocked him. A horrid limb bursts from his side, screams echo past the cell block as worry travels between the prisoners. Gem explodes outside from the prison wall, driving debris and smoke into the heavens. Civilians freeze mid-step as disorder bursts. From the rubble, a horrid person launches skyward, now carrying brutal arms with turned arms below. He shouts his goal to steal all's craft. Distant overhead the city, the hooded person floats, watching gleefully. He readies to observe the ruin unfold with satisfaction. Worry travels past the streets. Citizens scream and fly as structures tremble under approaching waves. Adventurers regroup. Single of them identifies the attacker, an unstable fraud finally dismissed. With a shout, they move to intercept him mid-air. Arms and spells fight in aloft as several adventurers launch a counterblow. Amazement flashes throughout the enemy's confront as they pierce formation. He retaliates wildly. Single after other, attackers are flung to the earth. Cries erupt, skills vanish, arms limp and useless. Hovering overhead, he laughs maniacally. The arms of his victims hang trapped to grotesque storm clouds, stolen and absorbed. Someone aimed fresh drops into the fray from overhead. Her sword gleams as Advantage whips her cloak ahead. Metal arcs clean past the corrupted mass. Her aura cuts past the insanity like a cold wind. Uncertainty crosses his confront. Single of his horrid arms abruptly drops to the earth, severed and motionless. Eyes narrow, the lady moves ahead with resolve. As an S-rank guildmaster, protecting this city is her duty. A form pierces her shoulder. The woman looks down, stunned, as blood begins to spill. In a flash, the enemy's corrupted mass latches onto her limb. Resistance fades as she's overwhelmed by its hold. Grinning wickedly, he claims her power as his personal. Her stolen limb turns into other blade under his rising monstrosity. A peaceful town rests large within the peaks, unaware of the ruins nearby where once a form tragic unfolds. Amid the cracked gem and rubble, a faint cry builds. Close by, a lady stumbles throughout a child, trapped under collapsed rocks. Desperately, she stretches out her hand, her urgency rising with every second. Lacking notice, a horrid person emerges, its turned frame huge overhead them, covered in grotesque growths. It moves ahead with unsettling certainty. The lady raises her sword in block, positioning her own skill between the child and the creature. The creature jeers, unfazed by her resistance. In a powerful show of strength, it hits the earth, unleashing a giant collision that shatters earth and air alike. The monster stared in uncertainty at the giant pit it had just created. Its triumphant grin faded as it sensed a form had gone amiss. A odd power swirled in the air as a lone person entered past the smoke. The smith had arrived, his aura steady yet commanding. Kneeling alongside the rescued maiden, he promised reassurance. Her wounds were healed and safety was at last within reach. The monster bellowed in rage, its confront contorted with hatred. It screamed the smith's title, unleashing its fury. Quietly observing the ruin, the man verified the fact all that happened here was the creature's doing. There would be no mercy. Ringed by scorched earth, the monster reveled in its ruin, saying this scene earlier. It as its greatest forging. Its grin widened as it mocked Vil. no longer viewing him as a powerless younger brother, but as prey under notice. Vil quietly triggered his enchanted gauntlet, the Golden Hand, ready to fulfill his duty not just to halt the danger, but to make the monster atone. With sacred impact channeled past his blade, he rushed, deflecting the giant spiked limb hurled at him with unshaken determination. Closing the gap at top quickness, Vil held his mallet tightly, aiming straight for the corrupted spirit of his former kin. Vil jumped ahead with impact, but the creature's spiked tail lunged and stunned initially, driving him falling down mid-air. Landing hard, he rapidly regained his footing, his resolve burning stronger, although the strike he'd just taken. Looking down, he observed a odd mark burning into his hand, a circular injury, pulsing ominously with black power. Throughout the field, the monster laughed with turned happiness, its frame twitching as it absorbed power from the dark emblem embedded in its flesh. Understanding dawned, Vil recognized the hex. It was a stolen ability enhancement, a black spell that filled away people's strength. The monster cackled triumphantly as a glowing mark grew throughout its chest. The object claimed ownership of the legendary Golden Hand, now stolen from Vil. Kneeling in silence, Vil muttered the title section. Seeing the dark item's influence had taken root in his rival, he stared forthcoming, recognizing the fact the monster had become a host to a wrathful entity, trapped to a dark artifact, feeding on ambition and hatred. With no delay, the creature lunged ahead. Earth exploded under the collision, creating Vil back with crushing impact. Mocking laughter filled the field. The creature requested why Vil, so proud of his golden limb, refused to strike back. While Vil knelt, the monster taunted him, pretending to understand what strength he truly sought to unleash. In response, Vil triggered his concealed arsenal. Huge metallic constructs rose from the earth, mystical boxes containing forgotten relics. Expression steady, he stated his determination. The enemy would perish, not by borrowed power, but by Vil's personal craft. But the monster stunned initially, conjuring a wave of explosive replicas, every surge aiming to erase Vil in a single strike. Smoke and dust filled the field. The creature looked on, quiet and tense, awaiting confirmation of his enemy's demise. The monster bellowed in frustration, demanding why he couldn't summon sacred arms like Vil. But Vil quietly shone the fact it was because the creature never understood how forging truly worked. Keeping his scarred hand up, Vil clarified that having a ability and mastering it were two very different matters. Infuriated, the creature shouted in denial. Large down, it understood it only ever owned the ability, never earned it. Vil's call was steady, lacking proper use. Still, stolen strength is meaningless, nothing more than wasted treasure and unworthy craft. Screaming in rage, the monster rejected his words, saying ruin the only answer to all. Vil went forthcoming. Alarm section to halt. Earlier it was too slowly. His call was steady, but the earth trembled. The monster ignored him and called forth crushing strength, unleashing his final strike with no delay or handling. Abruptly, worry stunned. The creature's expression turned as he understood. He couldn't rein in the disorder he had triggered. Explosions burst lacking end, tearing past the earth as power spiraled wildly, threatening also sides of the field. Amid the ruin, the creature screamed in hesitation and uncertainty, incapable to comprehend the strength slipping from his understand. He warned him once more, the power of the ruin ability was giant. Unruly output would lead to execution. The earth quaked under them, yet Sechin snarled in resistance, refusing to lose. Still, if it killed him, he would not bow to Vil driven by hatred. The monster launched a desperate strike, unleashing a powerful beam of power meant to obliterate all in its way. Braced for collision, but his expression shifted as several forces intercepted the strike from overhead. Reinforcements arrived. Warriors dropped past the debris, around Vil with timely power and strong aura, amazed. Vil turned at the newcomers. He didn't recognize the strong aura that had just intervened. Remaining earlier him were three formidable women, with a giant dragon looming back them. Their arrival turned the tide. Single of them rushed to Vil in teardrops, overwhelmed with ease. She scolded him gently, while he reassured her with a grin. With unwavering eyes, the wolf-eared warriors stated they owed their lives to Vil. Now, it was their turn to repay that debt. Vil bowed his directly with thanks and questioned them to buy him time. The real battle was about to begin. The three warriors pledged themselves to Vil with no delay, vowing to guard him still at the price of their lives. With a fight cry, they rushed ahead. Vil remained back, leaving them with the front lines as the monster towered forthcoming. Mana and metal clashed against gloom. Explosions lit the field as the trio launched their coordinated assault. Together, they released strong elemental attacks, ice rising like peaks, blades flying with precision. and whips crackling with thunderous power. In perfect formation, the women stunned as single. Under the constellations overhead, their synchronized strike carved past the disorder, still lacking the golden hand. There was still single thing to rely on: his mentor's mallet, passed down with intent. As a child, he counted the skills he had obtained: enhancement, reforging, total, rebuilding, ruin, and infinite replication. Yet, those weren't truly his. They belonged to people, fragments from generations trapped to the artifact's lineage. Recollections returned of simpler days at the forge. His mentor's ability had been reforging, a skill mastered past patience and determination. A steady hand on his directly told him his personal ability was different. Rare, unnamed, and it was still rising. He remembered the words from his mentor: his real ability would awaken. Finally, his mastery reached its peak. That instant had arrived. With mallet in hand, he called the art of reforging. Power swept past his frame as strength reacted to his will, still lacking the legendary hand. His right limb held the practice of countless creations. Knowledge carved into every gesture led him. Seasons of inherited method ran past him. His command over the reforging ability, finally his mentor's, now entirely ignited. From nothing, a sacred blade started to take form, an artifact born, not of inheritance, but of his personal forged destiny. From the rubble, Vil's damaged limb re-emerges, its center cut through and glowing with strength. Though several skills have been stolen from him, Vil remains steady. He approaches his dragon ally, requesting a level for an intent only he understands. With directed determination, Vil grips his blade tightly. His innate making ability remains unharmed, a strength no single can take away from him. 3 warriors remain at the prepared. Earlier them lies a field of scattered corpses, and a tension that is yet to pierce. A horrid person mocks them, claiming borrowed power is useless. The enemy underestimates what Vil can truly forge isolated. Just as the trio readies to strike, grotesque tentacles lash out from the earth, snaring them away. Watch. 2 of the women are stunned, and disorder bursts. The monster howls as the strength of the holy blade abruptly fades. Surprise floods its confront, while power bursts wildly around it. Vil paths raw strength past his split limb. Keeping a glowing level, he senses a surge within this time. He's prepared to make a form fresh. Recollections of the lives he's touched flash in his mind. Every confront, every grin, all forged past his right hand. Twin dragons descend, called forth by his forge. Their explosive charge turns the tide of fight once more. With no delay, the fox-eared warrior moves ahead, fiercely resolved to protect Vil from harm as the people regroup back her. Their eyes widen in hesitation as a massive dragon emerges, crushing the field with its sheer aura. The call for Vil grows desperate. Remaining atop his holy forge, Vil raises his limb. A sacred command echoes to forge a blade worthy of the sky. A brutal counterblow flings the defenders aside. The enemy, unrelenting, proclaims his purpose to seize all. From the heavens, Vil falls with sacred fury. With a blinding strike, he drives a giant mallet into the earth, shattering the field. From the sacred forge, a glowing sword bursts into the heavens, the sacred blade of light, crafted by Vil's personal hand. He gazes upon it with silent pride. The horrid foe reels in amazement. The sight of the sacred blade hits worry, its very existence rocking his certainty. Vil raises the blade top as thunder arcs around him. Power rushes past the blade, illuminating the field. Enemy roars in denial, claiming a mortal cannot forge a holy artifact. Yet Vil remains steady, sword in hand, defying the unthinkable. His allies rally alongside him. Dragons soar, arms are drawn. And the last fight begins with Vil leading them ahead. Ease travels as the girls confirm their wounds are healed. Vil's miraculous strength still restored what was finally gave up. Keeping the sacred blade, Vil releases its sacred power, a strength that negates all ruin, undoing the disorder wrought by the enemy. But the horrid foe retaliates in worry, launching a devastating strike that threatens to consume all in its way. Leaping into the heavens, Vil gathers light around his sword. His eyes remain steady as he readies a last strike, channeling holy power. In single mighty strike, he teardrops past the gloom, severing the enemy's strength with crushing impact. A giant erupted of power explodes throughout the heavens as Vil's last strike meets with the enemy's center, scattering gloom in all directions. The earth trembles as sacred light rains down, piercing past the disorder, cleansing all tainted by the enemy's strength. Engulfed by the glowing impact, the corrupted person disintegrates fully, incapable to resist the purifying decision released by Vil. Hovering overhead the peaceful capital, Vil looks down at the restored city. His hold tightens around the hilt, the sacred mark on his hand still glowing. Distant below, residents begin to realize what's happened. Limbs are healed, lives are restored, a wonder born from a smith's will. Crowds gather near the fallen creature, puzzled by the steady after the tempest. Eyes search for clarity in the silence that comes Vil's strike. Between the group, AIs identifies the strength Vil wielded. The title spoken sends ripples past the air, a method intent many gave up. She explains it was finally wielded by Lawrence, a legendary champion who defended the realm from sacred dark still hovering. Vil's sword glows faintly. The 8th sacred blade he forged holds the strength to repair all a feat no mortal ought to manage. With a silent farewell, he launches the holy blade from his hand, letting it vanish into the light. Purpose fulfilled. Vil launches the last fragments of the sacred blade into the air. Its duty finish, it dissolves into light as he offers a silent farewell. When questioned if the blade was damaged, Vil reassures them it merely returned to rest. Its strength too immense to remain in the realm forever. As tension builds once more, single of Vil's companions moves ahead, reminding the people of his mercy. A humbled smith speaks up, confessing he finally misunderstood Vil's brilliance. Still lacking sacred equipment, he admits Vil's ability touches godlike heights. Real power, he realizes, lies not in the forge but in the soul guiding it. Kneeling and trembling, the young man breaks down in teardrops. He admits Vil had always been greater not just in ability, but in entity. Instead of scold, he grants forgiveness with a touch of humor, lifting the tension and giving his hand in peace. Elsewhere, a lady watches over a child in her arms. In a prison-like chamber, someone chained remains silently under a looming cross. She confronts the prisoner, a man she knows all too well. The title Shiracle leaves her lips as she requests clarity. Lowering his directly, he admits his mistakes. In the end, the words "I'm sorry" reach her not in resistance, but in fact chained to the wall. The man states he'll shoulder the blame isolated. He rejects to let the lady or child suffer for his choices. Teardrops brimming, she explodes in anger. His words arrived too slowly. Her cries pierce past guilt and echo with suffering. Cradling their child, she weeps. As guards approach, a regal lady in a black gown announces the time has arrived, decision is near. The princess delivers her verdict. His crimes are grave, and punishment will be absolute. As the gates open, light floods the room. The beyond realm awaits, a later reshaped by Vil's legacy. Sound of damaged chains echoes as the shackles lag from his ankles. Uncertainty washes over also prisoners as they realize their punishment has shifted. A wagon is presented to them. The command is bright: depart the realm back and never come back. Still stunned, he asks if this isn't in punishment. A knight quietly responds they are simply following orders. A gap, the princess reflects on Vil's mercy. His choice shifted future, sparing lives that would have otherwise been gave up together. The small family rides into the horizon. Thankful the group know this later was only possible because of Vil. With certainty in his stance and mallet at his side, Vil states himself a maker, no longer just a smith, but single who shapes destinies. Although all he endured, he remains kind. When commended, he simply says it was right, the maiden was his kin, and saving her was natural. With a grin, Vil turns to his allies. The travels, he says, is only just starting, and there is still much to do. His partner wonders if their purpose is already finished. Vil replies the sacred blade isn't finished. Looking back with a grin, he states there's still so much more he wants to make. As Vil and his partner directly at the gates, someone watches from a faraway tower. A lady identifies them and readies to approach. She walks ahead, speaking as if destiny has at last aligned. Vil, she believes, is the single capable of fulfilling her many-awaited wish. Her goal is bright, she seeks the finishing of the Hakusei. Worry swept as the beastman couple dashed past the cave, the father's arms wrapped tightly around their daughter. Upon seeking a narrow opening between rocks, the parents rapidly hid the maiden. The mother told her to remain put while the child, puzzled and afraid, questioned about their future. They promised no clarity, only soft smiles under sweat-covered faces. Also stared at her, trying to appear steady as the instant pressed on them. Positioning themselves between the risk and their daughter, they braced for a last remain. The child screamed, arms seeking out in desperation, but her parents had already jumped into the fray, their figures vanishing past the rock wall's boundary. Silence dropped after a faraway roar echoed past the cavern. Only the girl's trembling craft held the gem wall, waiting. A horrid aura loomed earlier, her hiding spot. Its eyes glowed with malice as it saw the terrified child. Moments afterward, she jolted awake in bed, drenched in sweat. The blade on the wall remained still, but the weight of the memory lingered. Throughout the room, she sat quietly, haunted. Resolve returned as she reached for the blade. With steady moves, she rushed into the snowy wilderness. Eyes blazing, she drew her sword, its fiery presence flaring to future. This time, she wouldn't run. Heat radiated from the enchanted sword as it pulsed with power. Her hold tightened steady, although the weight of strength surging past it. With a rapid swing, she released a stream of black flame into the heavens. The arc blazed ahead, splitting storm clouds and bending the air. At a gap, a fortress remained against the mountain range. Smoke trails led to its gates, her way was set. Reflections of the former life flickered in her mind, a lady's gaze, a blade clashing in light, and a smirk that stirred unease. A majestic person dropped, ringed by wings of sacred fire. The warrior's aura brought also wonder and challenge. Her following trial had arrived. Cheerful winged maiden dropped from the heavens, her aura light but commanding. Remaining straight earlier, the two girls exchanged words. Single held her sword with gaze, while the other stated the sword's concealed strength, its power to draw in gloom itself. A fresh person went forthcoming, showing a black method with crushing impact. Doubt lingered in her mind. She confessed her power was lacking and promised to become stronger, keeping tightly to the hilt of her blade. At a gap, a young man approached with a grin. After spending weeks inside the forge, he at last returned prepared to show what he had mastered. Although her attempt, she understood she hadn't made it in time. Still, she remained tall, greeting the returning smith with a calm grin. Her eyes narrowed as she stared into the reflection on her sword. A silent vow made she would become stronger, for the sake of confronting the single she resented. Elsewhere, he stretched lazily under the morning light, unaware of the tension that still lingered in her chest. With a casual wave, he welcomed her warmly. Light shimmered throughout her leg, showing a fresh, glowing mark. The people observed it quickly. The glowing blade-formed sigil signaled her connection to a sacred blade forged by the maker himself, stated that Lux, still in her infancy, couldn't speak like Yozora. Yet, she seemed fond of Poro's soft tail, and he questioned her to watch over the creature. Smiling confidently, he shone his plans to nurture the holy blade of light and make countless fresh matters through sacred smithing strength. Fresh travels awaited. The group agreed to place the territory to Rory, who accepted the task with exaggerated enthusiasm. Elsewhere, Poro wondered aloud if she could truly become as powerful as the other champions, now carrying two sacred swords. Thrills stirred as they departed by wagon. Though the forge had its charm, the realm beyond held greater adventure. The cart rumbled past the countryside, pulled by a mechanical horse. Its stiff, segmented frame went with exact, rhythmic moves, powered by mana. Inside, Vil stated that the horse was a magical automaton, single of many equipment he'd crafted. His partner observed that many automatons were humanoid. Unbothered, Vil simply cried at his tireless mana horse cart. She smiled, impressed by his strange ideas and inventiveness. As the cart went on down the forest way, her ears twitched. A faint noise broke past the steady hum of travel. She remained rapidly, blade prepared. From the trees forthcoming, someone was being attacked, likely by bandits. Vil turned, already preparing to move. Vil stated they would aid. Poro appeared amazed. He usually didn't explain himself. Her curiosity piqued at his unexpected altar. From overhead, a floating cube dropped as Vil spoke quietly. If someone was in trouble, helping them was the obvious choice. A revolver emerged from the box. Poro picked it up with broadly eyes, puzzled by its presence and intent. Grinning, Vil directed the blade. It was a modified model he had created himself, single capable of reversing cause and effect. He fired. The shot touched down perfectly. Still from that gap, he struck his mark, keeping Poro stunned by his precision. With a steady grin, Vil announced the job was done. His custom revolver still smoked, having fired several shots in rapid succession. Below, the attackers lay unconscious. Every shot had touched down perfectly. Poro, stunned, understood none of the targets had been killed. The group were only subdued. Vil stated the gun's function. It reversed cause and effect. Targets were strike, not because he directed, but because they were meant to be strike. Though the concept puzzled her, Poro commended the blade's accuracy and design. Her wonder was bright. Abruptly, a cloaked person emerged from the darkness. Vil rushed ahead and grabbed the collapsing stranger in his arms. The person, hooded and weakened, seemed to have been attacked by bandits. Through single of his crafted healing devices, Vil restored the stranger's power. The lady rose steadily, her wounds entirely healed. To their amazement, she shone her identity ragdoll, third princess of the Beastkin realm. Identifying Vil as the holy swordsmith, she bowed respectfully, distressed. Ragdoll begged for his aid. Her mother's sacred blade was in crisis, and her homeland remained on the brink of ruin. At the word holy blade, Poro's thoughts turned elsewhere. Other champion, other wielder. A memory or alarm stirred within her. Poro blinked, amazed by how rapidly he accepted the purpose. He gently reassured her. After all, he'd handled the maintenance of the Beastkin realm's holy blade. Keeping his mallet, Vil spoke with steady conviction. Setting matters was his creed as a craftsman. If the blade broke, the wielder would worry too. Poro echoed his words gently, single spirit with the holy blade. The idea resonated deeply within her. Next, Vil shone a rare teleportation crystal with it. They could travel anywhere instantly. Vil stated that he had modified the crystal to allow group teleportation. The people listened, impressed but cautious. With power and confidence, Vil triggered the crystal. The trio was instantly enveloped in light, vanishing at the Beastkin realm. The group touched down in dense vegetation. Vil emerged from the bushes, amazed by the wild surroundings. It was different than he remembered. At a gap remained a massive tree dominating the landscape. The sheer size of it made them speechless.